boys and girls, I have a story for you today called Trouble on the Beach. Ivy and her little brother Eddie had just arrived at the beach and were playing in the sand for the first time. Of anybody else in the world, they should have been the most happiest. But do you think they were? No, definitely not. Instead of being happy, they were both in the worst moods possible. They fought and complained about everything. Mum had bought them new buckets and a new spade each, one with red paint on it and the other with green. But do you think they were happy to take one each? No, they both fought over the red one, even though the green one was just as good. One new bucket had a little dint in it, and do you think either of them wanted it? No, they didn't. They both fought over the one that didn't have a dint in it. And when it came to digging in the sand, they both wanted to dig in the same spot, even though there was a whole wide beach for them to dig in. I started digging here first, cried Ivy. No, you didn't, I did, retorted Eddie, jumping into the middle of the sandcastle that Ivy had just made. You're the worst, wailed Ivy, distressed by Eddie's antics. You ruined my castle, just you wait till I get you. And then began the chase. Ivy chased Eddie around the 2 deck chairs until Eddie fell down with Ivy on top of him. There was a terrible scramble until at last both of them stood up crying as hard as they could. What's going on here? Mum cried as she walked over to them. If this is how you're going to behave, then we should just go home. It was her fault, Eddie bellowed, tears cascading down his face. No, it wasn't, it was his, Ivy wailed. He jumped on my castle. She was digging where I wanted to dig, sobbed Eddie as he pointed to his overturned bucket. And he got the bucket and spade I wanted, moaned Ivy, trying to look angry. Dear, oh dear, Mum cried, covering her ears with her hands and shaking her head. Why did I even bother bringing you two to the beach? Do you know what you look like? You look like 2 naughty little goblins. But I'm not a gobble, cried Eddie between sobs. You should see yourself, Mum said sternly. We're trying to have a lovely holiday at the beach and all you two can do is fight. You should be happy and smiling. But he shouldn't have jumped on my... Ivy started to say. Ivy, be quiet, please. Can't you just be happy? No, I can't, wailed Ivy. Then come with me, both of you, Mum said, taking their hands and leading them towards one of the sideshows some distance away. I want to show you something. Grumbling all the way, the kids didn't notice that Mum was leading them towards a so-called House of Smiles that had a distorted mirror outside of it. There, said Mum, look in that mirror and you can see what other people think of you. Ivy and Eddie looked. What a sight! In the mirror they saw 2 strange-looking people with long, tear-stained faces, long legs and short, fat little tummies. It wasn't long before they started to smile and then laugh. A wrinkly, rippling smile wobbled across Eddie's mouth as he looked at the very strange reflection in the mirror. We did look like gobbles, didn't we, Mum? Eddie cried. You most certainly did, replied Mum. So every time you fight and quarrel, I'm going to send you back here to look in this mirror to remind you of what you look like. Ivy and Eddie nodded and laughed, smiling as they turned and left the House of Smiles, headed back to the beach to make a more cheerful start to their summer holiday.